This show is sponsored by HiveMind CRM. It is more than just a CRM. It is a real estate and business mastermind that comes with an all-in-one CRM. You can have unlimited websites and users. You can call, text, RVM, and email all in one user interface. And you can set up custom automations for any type and multiple businesses. 65% of companies start using a CRM system within the first 5 years of business. Once implemented, the HiveMind will save you on marketing, give you more time, and make more money. One of our users had his first $100,000 month using our system in June. We want to see you automate and accelerate your business. Text us at 210-972-1842 for future meetings and, of course, to get our $1 course on how to make more than 6 figures on one land deal. You can schedule your free demo today at hivemindcrm.io.
Welcome, everybody, to the Hive Mind, Hive With Us podcast. We are here today with Stephen Keighery, I hope I pronounced that correctly, of Homebuyer, Louisiana. And today we're going to learn why he left Australia, came to the U.S., what's working here, what's working still at home, and let's have at it. I'd like to introduce my co-host, Daniel Martinez, and founder of the Hive With Us podcast, and of course, Aussie Steve.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me on the show. It's an honor.
So one of the first things I always ask is, like, how'd you end up in real estate in Louisiana? I mean, if it's a short story.
So I mean, I started real estate. I'm really heavily influenced by Robert Keighery, like most people are. So, I started business straight out of university, always with the intention to buy assets in real estate. So I sort of started with that mindset. Took me a little while. I started the business first, then buying a few properties in Australia. I ended up leaving my business. I was able to sell a bunch of shares, and take a year off with my plan. And, we love America, and New Orleans is our favorite city. So we headed to New Orleans for 6 months just to, have some fun. And that's part of Robert Keighery's book, Retire Young, Retire Rich. He took a year off when he exited. So that's why we came here. And I love property. We fell in love with New Orleans as an area and culture and everything. And, my wife wanted to stay, and I started looking at the market and, realizing I wanted to do more in real estate. I just realized the market was much better. I had some really good sales and marketing skills from my past company, and I learned, that I could acquire deals at really good prices, at cash flow. And so that's why I went all in on property here in New Orleans.
Say it one more time.
In New Orleans.
I'm like, I don't know if that was like a city I've never heard of, or
Nolans.
You pulling out the accent.
It's funny because I definitely sound Australian. I stand out here, like people call me Aussie Steve. There's not a lot of Australians that live here. So, I definitely stand out as an Australian. But I think when I speak to Australians, they're like, what is this dude talking about? Because I still have the Aussie accent, but I say a whole bunch of different words and different inflections. So I don't know. I guess I'm a bit of a gumbo now.
Yeah, that fits New Orleans in general, though. It's a melting pot from all over the world.
Exactly.
So how long have you been in New Orleans now?
So it's been 4 years. So yeah, it became 4 years ago. And it's funny story in that I was staying in an Airbnb, which we had for 6 months. And when we decided to stay, we got a lease on it for a period. And then I started doing the wholesaling and buying properties. And the owner reached out to me at the end of my lease and was like, a lease is expiring. He lived in Chicago. He's like, I don't think we can really manage the property. Do you guys maybe want to buy it? And I'm like, oh my God, I got an out of state, tired landlord, and I'm living in his house. If I can't do a deal on this, I don't know what I'm doing in real estate. So I actually got a lease option on that house. And I closed on it this year, actually. So I had a lease for 2 years, 75% of my rent counted as equity over that period. The house fully appreciated. Like I had locked in the price from 2 years ago. and that Airbnb I now own, and I use it as an Airbnb for new people.
Nice. That's it's an interesting path we take as investors.
Yes. Once you start learning this stuff, you start seeing the opportunities everywhere, right? We are probably a couple of years ago that were just passing right by. I wouldn't have even thought twice.
Yeah, I talked to. It's a funny story because I was talking to my friend from Atlanta, and he's renting right now too. And he had tired landlord thing, and he started learning about real estate. So now his whole mind's working with like, hey, can I get owner finance on this property? And he's all,
Exactly right. Well, the funny thing is, right? So, like, I own a bunch of properties, and I started buying, back in, I don't know, maybe 8 or so years ago in Australia. But I never owned a property. The first property I bought is this house now, which I bought this year. And because we always rented where we lived and invested in other places, and it was just because where we're from in Sydney, Australia, super expensive, and where we lived was one of the better areas, and the rent relative to the price, like the yield, was ridiculous. Like, so it made more sense to rent because the rent is low relative to the price there, and we'd buy investment properties, where it made more sense. So, there's nothing wrong with being a renter as an investor, and I did that a very long time and acquired a lot of properties before I purchased a place to actually live in and call home.
now, are you a citizen of the U.S. or you still have citizenship in Australia?
I'm still a citizen of Australia. I'm a resident alien is my technical term. So,
Okay.
cue the X-Files music. But I have a business investment visa. So basically, if you start a business over here and invest money and hire people, then the borders open up. It's funny. And that's the visa I have. So it gives me pretty much all the rights of a citizen, but I'm not a citizen. I think we're going to do that. I'm starting to turn. I haven't been happy with Australia over COVID. They've become just way more authoritarian, lockdowns, and I think I want to get my citizenship here as a backup.
Okay, that's interesting, man. We've had a few out of country investors that invested from out of the country.
Yes.
And are visiting here, like who are here as well as aliens as well. So it's kind of interesting to see the dynamic of what people are doing because I think we interviewed Alicia Jarrett. I think she lives in Australia and she invests out here heavily, and she lives in Australia. So it's one of those things where like there's no wrong answer. It's just interesting to see the dynamic. But I'm really glad you mentioned it. That anybody, if you start a business, the doors open up. I think it's a huge nugget right there that I really want to touch on right there. And if you're looking to come to the U.S., start a business. Do you have to hire U.S. based employees, or do you have?
You do, and they like really the criteria is pretty loose. It's you need to make a significant investment. Like that's the definition, significant. There's no number to that. But they do like for you to, and the significant, speaking to my lawyers, it just basically means you need to capitalize the business. The government wants to make sure you're not going to come over and be a drain on the economy. They want you to contribute to the economy. So you need to have a plan that shows you're going to have a business, and you have to have capital to back up that plan, which could be small or large depending on your plan. And they do like for you to have 5 full-time employees within the first 5 years. So you need to show a plan for that. But it's just a plan, and things can change as you go along.
No, that's 5 full-time employees is not that bad. I mean, that's not that bad at all. And if you're hiring, if you do what we do, you probably have like salespeople that are commission-based, and that's it.
Yeah, we'll see. I've got a local salesperson, which is good. I did it obviously because of my visa, but it's a big advantage because a lot of the salespeople are foreign, and that works economically. But it is a real advantage for me. I got a local New Orleans person, and she just really vibes with sellers, and it really works.
So I know
the local accent helps as well.
Accent and knowledge, absolutely.
Yeah.
She helped me figure out the names of the streets, although it's just inside secret. No one in New Orleans knows the name of the street. They all say it differently. It's if you say it confidently, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
So you've been in New Orleans for a while. What's New Orleans, or I know Louisiana is like one of the lowest price markets. Is New Orleans like the outlier in all of Louisiana because it's a major city? or is it like you can still? I know like Birmingham, you can still find a house for like $30K. Is it like Louisiana?
Yeah, I wish the 30Ks were here. You're not getting that here. Depending on the area, median price might be 300, 200. You can definitely buy houses though for 60K, 50K that need work. And the ARV might be like 150K, 175K. So you can definitely get them at good prices. It's a tricky market, which also makes it it's a hard market to operate in because it varies a lot. Like you want to be across the street and you're in a different neighborhood. It doesn't have those nice subdivisions you probably find in Florida, and Arizona, and so it makes it really hard to get your head around. But that also means we don't see the iBuyers, the hedge funds, like those people aren't in our market. So I think it creates more opportunity for people that know to get those good deals. But then it doesn't have that whole that you'll get from those hedge fund buyers coming in. But by the same token, I think if we start going down, it's not going to have that same, if it goes up, it can go down like that. Whereas it's a pretty steady, decent market.
So I'm assuming everything there. Sorry, Daniel. I was just going to say, I'm assuming everything there's a flood zone in New Orleans.
Yeah, I mean, we have a thing called Flood Zone X, which is like a preferred flood zone, and historically that was cheap flood insurance, but they just did the whole FEMA 2.0, which I think is international, right? That was is national. That was a whole re-rating of the flood system, and we got hammered. So Flood Zone X would used to be $400 or $500 a year. They can go up to a couple grand. It is actually a big factor right now in our market, and I think it will hurt. It was interest rates going up, the insurance has gone up for the flood, and also for the wind and hail, given the hurricanes we're having. So insurance is a big deal here, and it is impacting our market. But if it is a Flood Zone X, you don't have to have insurance. So it might have gone up, but it's still your option. But if it's in a different flood zone, you have to have insurance, and those rates can be pretty high right now.
So one thing I know about New Orleans, have you come across like historic homes? Because I know New Orleans is an old city as far as it's been around for a long time. So you probably come across like these 100-plus-year-old homes.
Hell yeah.
That have certain requirements with the city.
Yeah, I mean, there's historic districts. So, I mean, there's a lot of old homes. So the house I mentioned, the Airbnb, is 160 years old. It was fully renovated like 6 years ago, but it's old, right? But the one thing is, because of Hurricane Katrina, obviously it was a very devastating hurricane and flood here. A lot of the housing stock at least got repaired. So even their old homes, you generally, if they flooded in Katrina, which most of them did, they got new plumbing, new electric, new roof. So it actually, as devastating as it was, it sort of upgraded the housing stock. Because I know in Ohio and other markets, people literally look at houses that haven't been renovated in 100 years. You know what I mean? Like the 100-year-old pipe. So we don't really get that as much. But there is historic districts. So if you're around the French Quarter, yeah, that can be annoying. You need to adhere by those codes, and it's you're going to spend a bit more time with the city and planning and all that sort of stuff.
I imagine you spend more time searching for black mold and such like that wasn't treated properly.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You might get some Chinese drywall that was put in that time, but it's not that much of it. Now, me personally, like I do a lot of burr. I like rentals. I wholesale, so I don't do a lot of flips. So those if it needs a big rehab, I'm just going to wholesale that because that's not really my skill set. If it needs a small rehab, I don't really want to pull permits. So if it's like something can get away with not pulling permits, floors, kitchen, bathroom, maybe a roof, but like I'll keep that. If it needs a full rehab, it's gutted, I'm just going to wholesale it and keep moving.
That's interesting. No, I think it's important staying in your wheelhouse and not venturing too far out because it's just not your comfort zone. So yes. Are you keeping stuff for rental majority? Or are you doing Airbnb and rental, or majority Airbnb?
Just really rentals, to be honest. I got the one Airbnb, and that's because I bought it. It was an Airbnb, it just had the license. So like I did it just because it's really the property, was should have been that. But I'm doing long-term rentals. I really like the burn method. For me, the 30-year fixed debt is awesome. I think being an Australian, I appreciate that because you guys might not even know. I find Americans take it for granted that you guys have 30-year fixed interest. it is the only country in the world that has 30-year fixed interest rates. Because that's
what are you getting in Australia?
You get 5 years max, 5 years max, and then it goes to an arm. Yeah. So interest rates really hurt Australia because when our Reserve Bank, which I just did actually yesterday, they put the interest rate up, everyone gets affected because they're going to get affected really soon. So it has a real impact on the economy. Whereas in America, everyone has these fixed 30-year debt, which is amazing. In an inflationary environment, I was really busy the last couple of years, just buying them, putting debt on them, and I'm like, yeah, like let the inflation inflate away that debt. You know what I mean? Like, that's sort of my wheelhouse. I like those long-term rentals, just something where it's going to cash flow a little, at least the tenant's paying down that debt, and I'm just going to sit on it. My plan is to sit on it for 30 years. I don't really intend to sell it. I'll never say never, but I mean, I'm just going to let them run and keep that low interest rate, let that inflation keep, increasing the rent and the value, and, that note payment is going to be fixed for 30 years.
There are DSCR loans that are also fixed rate that you can use that work well with the short-term rentals. I know a lot of lenders who only specialize in people who are doing short-term rentals, and they do the DSCR loans for those. And it does provide, in a city like New Orleans. But then you mentioned the license. What's the extra costs added? Like by the city of New Orleans for that.
It's really restrictive here. So they have a lot of so you can't do like the French Quarter, you can't do Airbnbs in the Garden District where I live. You can't do Airbnbs. They really limit it to. There's a lot of pushback from the locals. They don't like it because it takes away their housing stock, and you really have to live in a house. You can get a homestead exemption. So if you're in a double and you live in one side, you can do it, but it's hard to build a portfolio. There was an exception, which is the house I bought. I bought it because it was commercially zoned. If it's commercially zoned, you can do an Airbnb on 25% of the property, or one. Mine's a 3-plex, so I can do an Airbnb on one of them. So, I just got my license in. They changed the laws now. I'm grandfathered, so I'm cool. But they changed the laws so you can still do it. But the catch is that because it's commercial, you're no longer on the residential building code. You're on a commercial building code. So it means you need to have like ADA, disabled. It's got to have fire. The forest. Yeah, like for real. Mine has a big driveway where you drive in, but like it would have looked at it and said, no, this is it's a commercial car park. You can't have one entrance. You need view my driveway with 4 spots as a commercial car park, which would never pass. So the house I have would never be an Airbnb if you didn't have the license now. So it's not great. I mean, it's good for me because that one's going to do well. But it's hard to build a big portfolio of Airbnbs here.
That's
definitely sounds tough.
With all the Airbnb regulations, it's like, man, they make it difficult. And like even with the commercial thing, like making your property go commercial can totally ruin it being Airbnb. So if you bought it just for an Airbnb, you're screwed.
Yeah, and that's their intention. I mean, they're saying, hey, you can still do it, but like the intention of bringing those laws in place was really for people because it's very unlikely a viable project. It's essentially killing all those potential Airbnbs.
Yeah, some cities and states are just, okay, let's do some business. And others, they'll just do all they can to shut it down. And which is funny because, New Orleans is very much a tourist location. So you'd think they'd be allowing stuff like that. But then the hotel motel industry might be putting a lot of pressure to not allow it. So
it's exactly right. And then the individuals, they don't want the neighborhoods changing. Someone said this to me, which I think was actually a really good idea. They're like, because some people like just don't. You shouldn't have these Airbnbs in my area. It's a neighborhood. Okay, that's fine. If you think that though, you shouldn't go and stay in an Airbnb in someone else's neighborhood, right? But these people are like, yeah, don't do it in my backyard, but I'm going to go stay in your area in an Airbnb.
Yep, definitely fun stuff. We've got them here, pretty strong in Florida, and depending on where you go, around Disney World and its general metroplex, there are a lot of subdivisions and resort communities that are strictly short-term rental. You cannot live there long-term. 179 days is the maximum someone's long-term stay. in some of them. So, and they'll do higher end amenities. You end up paying a lot more. We were just looking at one recently, and it was $700 some odd a month HOA fee, for pool and some other nice stuff. But that's on top of a nearly $2,000 a month note, and then management fees and stuff like that. Because obviously, unless you live right there in that city and do it all yourself, so it's it can get a little restrictive. But that's it's a high risk. As my partner says, I've got a business partner, and this is our entire focus, is Airbnb and short-term rentals, and it's high risk but very high reward.
Yeah.
So
I mean, the one
know what you're getting into, which you've obviously done your research as well.
Well, the one I've got doing really well. Again, I wasn't really that interested in doing it, but like it's doing really well. So like I'm going, maybe you could do some more. But again, the laws are sort of a little bit restrictive, so I'll probably stick with the long terms at this point.
So now the company in Australia, I saw you took a company public. Do you still own that? Are you still on the board, or just got bought out, hold stock, move on?
I have some shares. I have some shares. So obviously, the company was High Pages Group. It's pretty much like a Home Advisor or Angie List here in America. Connecting contractors with homeowners. Look, I was a partner in that business, grew it over 14 or so years. I sold some of my shares, and I left operationally. So I haven't been like anything operational in the company for about 4 years. But I do still have shares. Man, they dropped. Man, I'm so lucky actually. My wife, I told you I bought my first home, right? My wife was like, "We've got to buy a home now. I'm ready." I'm like, okay, she's been good and let me not buy a home for a long time, and just invest. So we bought this house, and I sold my shares. When I sold a bunch of shares to help purchase it. And when I sold them, they were $3.60 a share. They're like $1.20 now. And I did not see that coming.
Good timing.
I did it's great timing. All ass, no class. Man, I did not see that coming. And I think my wife, she made me do it. And I'm like, man, that was actually a really good conversion, because the stock market's taking a hit. Tech companies are taking a hit. They didn't like our last report, and it got hammered. But I still own a bunch of shares in it. And I wouldn't sell them now, because I'd be a buyer now. The price it is, man, I'm not going to sell shares at that price. I don't need to buy more because I have enough, but I'm definitely not selling them now.
So I really want to touch on you being about Florida. I mean, not Florida, but Australia not being like investor friendly at all. Do you still work with like people from Australia to invest money here in the United States because it's not so friendly?
I've thought about it. I actually have some friends who suggested I do that, but I just don't want to. Because I'm a little bit more lifestyle balanced now. I don't really want to take, I'm sort of happy just to do my own thing, and but it's not that they're not investor friendly. It's just I'm probably this is going to be controversial. Australians are stupid when it comes to property investing, and that's the problem, right? And it's just real, because we have this law. It's called negative gearing. But basically what that law is if you lose money in your investment property, you can offset that loss against your W-2 income, right? So what happens is all the accountants say to the lawyers, doctors, high earning people, they're like, hey, you're paying too much tax. You should buy investment property and negative gear, which they do. So they buy the property. It loses money every month, but they're like, hey, look at all this tax I'm saving. And our tax rate gets to 50 cents in the dollar. And it's like, dude, you're spending $1 and you're getting 50 cents back. Like, dude, I'll give you 60 cents, man. Give me your dollars. But that's really hard to compete against that. And because most Australians, they bank on the capital gain. And the truth is, there's been lots of capital gain. It is a really highly appreciating market. And you do, the capital gain tends to play out, but you're losing money every month. Like, what's the point? So that's the backdrop of investing, and that's why it just makes it really hard to, I have 6 single family rentals in Australia. They pretty much break even. They've grown, they've appreciated massively, but they pretty much break even, and that's a really good investment in Australia. Like, I did really well to have these break even properties, But that's why when I look around America, I'm like, man, what are we doing? Like I love my property. I like the diversification.
I understand why you moved now.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not going to sell my properties. I like the diversification, but I would never buy another property in Australia. Just America's way better.
No, I think it's funny because you mentioned like negative cash flows. And like I would never do that. They're morons. And like now you're like totally different market, totally doing different things, and it's like it's like you're an old school Burr person because of Australia's hard. They trained you not to do it.
Yeah, maybe.
You've been put through the system, and now you're set in your ways.
Yeah, well, but he. I mean, he like to be. It's easy to get a profit, you know. And I mean, when I bought my property in Australia, I bought not where I lived. Right, I really geeked out, did a lot of research. You know, I started with I had to break even at least. You know, and I picked really good areas. And I'm buying in New Orleans now mainly. You know, Greater New Orleans. And look, if I did the same things in Australia, I probably wouldn't pick New Orleans. Like I think New Orleans is like happens to be the best market in America. But what I do like about America here is like you can off market properties, and because I'm buying really well, I'm doing my own marketing, you know, motivated sellers. Like I'm buying when you buy under market, you can't go wrong, right? It doesn't really matter what the market is as long as it's a half decent market. If you're buying well below market, you're always going to win.
So let's talk about marketing. What type of marketing is working for you in New Orleans because it's a smaller market in general?
Yeah, I'm doing a lot of online, and mainly because that's my background. You know, being from a tech company, so you know, I've done a lot of mailers. SMS used to be my best lead source. I built the business firstly on SMS, but I started to transition out, just seeing the laws changing, and then I went back to my roots, which is like SEO and SEM, search engine marketing optimization. So I do a lot of that. I grew up in that. Like I know that like the back of my hand. And also on the back of that too, I do a lot of branding. So, you know, like when people visit I send people to my website. Even if I do a direct mail, I'll send them to my website. If you go to my website, you're going to see videos, you're going to see me at closings, you're going to see me in houses, you're going to read content. And that way, when we speak to the sellers, there's already trust. And it's a real, you know, so I don't need to get as many leads as other people because my conversions are generally much higher. You know, if I'm in a ballpark of other people, they're going to pick me, you know, and that's so really, I'd say my marketing, it's branding with a real digital online presence.
Yeah, I was looking through a lot of your social media and I see a lot of your closings and stuff and a lot of happy people there. You know, that says a lot. You know,
I think that's really important. Yeah, I think it's really important. And just like to your listeners, I want to say this because I think a lot of people do this wrong. And it's because like you learn from gurus, right? And I did too. I did a lot of different people's, and you learn from these people who you base your business on. And then you look at the marketing they do, but then they're marketing to you. You know what I mean? They're marketing because they're building, you know, a business on coaching as well. So they're posting checks and they're posting money and dollars. And that has a place. Don't get me wrong. Like that's some, but for me, I really conscious was I'm a consumer brand. Like I'm a seller brand, you know? So all of my posts, all my marketing, it's about the sellers. It's about solving problems. I'm thinking about them. You'll never see a check, right? Because like the seller doesn't want to see a check. They want to see a closing, a smiling face, a problem solved. You know, they want to see the houses. You know, people often comment, they see my videos, they see me in the houses. And they're like, they'll relate to that. They'll relate to, oh yeah, my house is messy, but I see you do worse. You know what I mean? So I'm really conscious on, and my background's marketing, so I get this stuff. So like, I'm really conscious on that marketing aspect, and I think a lot of people miss that.
I'm really glad you touched on branding in general, just because I could tell you do it too, and it's very powerful in its own way. Because Frank was like, "Oh, who are we interviewing?" I'm like, "It's Steve from Louisiana." Steve from Louisiana, and it comes up the Australian investor from Louisiana, and it comes up like that. So yeah. Getting branding online is so powerful, so powerful. And I try and tell people how powerful it is, and it's one of those things where it's one of those things where you can't really put a price on it, but when it's done right, it is such a huge benefit.
It's that conversion rate, and it helps your time because like a lead is more valuable because they're more likely to choose you. You know what I mean? Like, and you do this marketing, you might do mail, and they're going to Google you or they're going to look at your website, and if you don't have a presence, to be honest, they're probably going to call me, and that happens. Like people will, so they might get prompted by someone else's marketing, but then end up trying to find out who's legitimate buyer, and those paths are all going to point to me. If you know what I mean.
So, you mentioned a couple of different ways to kind of build up your branding. Do you see these podcasts as reaching potential sellers as branding wise too, or it's just getting more SEO?
It's really SEO, right? So you get how my mind ticks, right? Like SEO, the more links you get to your site, the more important you are. You know, I have a slight theory that being on a podcast, Google might see that as authority. I don't know if that's as a fact, but I spent a lot of time doing Google SEO. In my old company, we had heads of SEO, we had content writers. Like, you know, I wasn't the expert, but I've been around as experts. I've been managers to them. So I've formed this view that I don't think of the Google algorithm. People get stuck in the algorithm. You do this, you do that. Like, forget the algorithm. The algorithms change all the time. I've made that mistake. Change this to the algorithm. I've learned it, and the algorithm will change, right? But if you think about Google as like a human, as someone that wants to show the right people, that's how I think of Google. So be the right person. Do the right things, you know. And I know they like authority, they like links. I guess being on podcasts, that would be a signal of authority. Whether they're doing that now or not, I don't know. But I'm doing the podcast because I'm getting the links. I'm building the authority. Worst case, you Google me, you'll see a whole bunch of podcasts. You'll see I'm a legit person in business.
Definitely. And you see a lot of family.
Yes.
So, and that is, you know, in this day and age, I think is another key point. You know, if you're solving problems and you're family focused, and I think that makes a world of difference as opposed to a strong corporate showing where it's cold and impersonal.
Exactly.
So,
and you will see my marketing, like my videos, they're super like there's no production, like zero. And I think I've done 2 takes maybe once in my life, right? And there's a couple of reasons for that. Like, firstly, I think it's more authentic. You know, it's just real. It's not flashy. You know, and then secondly, it makes it easy to do. Like, just do heaps of it. You know, if I made it real fancy, I probably wouldn't have many videos. But it's real. I literally walk in the house, pull out the video, I'll talk. The first thing that comes to my head, I'll talk about the situation. I'll and post it. You know, if I'm at a closing with the sellers, I'm just like, I literally go, can you do a video? Boom, what was it like? And I don't give them any warning. I'm just like, I'm filming them on the spot, and then just say whatever they say. You know, and I think that just shows authenticity. You don't want to be too slick. You want to be marketing, but you don't want to be too slick that you feel heartless and, you know, just corporate, as you said.
So with your PPC working for you now, I think it's working great. I can tell. I do the podcast for SEO largely. I do it to get back, but I use it largely for SEO. And it's one of those things where, like, I'm gonna put the power of your name is so powerful. Like, your name is so powerful, and you leverage it. And I even, like, right now, like when you came in as Aussie Steve, it was one of those things where, like, you're trying to brand yourself as Aussie Steve, and it's really cool, and it comes across, and I love it, man. It's cool.
The Aussie Steve works, right? And it works in New Orleans because I stand out, and it's like, you know who it is. Someone says, you know, Steve, like Aussie Steve. It's like you know who you're talking about, so it makes it easy to remember, etc.
Definitely. So now, what's on your future plans? What's the next 5 years or 10 years look like?
Yeah, really Burr properties. I'm just trying to build a rental portfolio, the long-term wealth. So, you know, I'm at a stage, you know, now where I'm not trying to build a big business. I've done that, and I don't want to do that again. I'm luckily I have some capital from that business, so I am really just trying to keep building the portfolio. I enjoy what I do. I love solving the problems. I love the real estate. It's fun, you know. So I'm really trying to keep it fun, keep going, just keep adding properties to my portfolio. I'll keep wholesaling because for me, the wholesaling means you monetize the leads, which means I can afford to spend money on marketing. Hey Daniel, so I can spend money on marketing, but really the wholesaling is just to keep the operation going and keep cash flowing. The real business is those rentals, those burrs, and being a wholesaler, I get to pick the easy ones. I wouldn't even say it's the best deals because all my deals are good. I make sure like I send good deals to my buyers, but they're gonna work for that good deal, right? Because it's gonna need more work. If it's like doesn't need much work, I'm gonna keep that. And that's hard. It's hard to get those deals that don't need much work, but it's still a good price. You really need to find those yourself.
So let's talk about work-life balance because I think I really love that about you. As you kind of mentioned, that's kind of your focus now, and you really don't want to do any other things because you kind of toned in on that. What's that look like on your day-to-day right now as far as work-life balance?
Well, look, my view on work-life balance is that fundamentally the balance is out of balance, right? You sort of go this way, that way, that way. Balance is the middle, and it takes times of you really putting your head down. And so I've been really unbalanced at times. When early in my career, man, I worked my ass off, dude. I was at first thing in the work, planning the day for my team. I'm there at the end of the day, like I burnt the candle at both ends. I worked really hard, and that was hard. It was hard on my family. My family was really supportive. So now for me, I'm like, now my balance is trying to be more relaxed now. So I go to the office every day. But I'm like, if my kids have an appointment, if I need to do this, I'll do it. I'll just, whereas back in the day, I wouldn't do it. I would schedule it. I'm rarely home late. I might go to a few meetups because that's important, but I'm rarely home late. I definitely have a higher emphasis on just giving time to my family as opposed to back in the day, work came first.
It's an experience. It's the experience. You kind of get wiser as you get older.
Yeah, and it's like, look, I just generally too, like I put a lot of emphasis on. I think I'm really driven by freedom. Like I was always driven by like not having to listen to a boss, not having to like be reliant on the government. So and that meant financial to me. So I was always very financially oriented, and I've always focused on financial. I read all the time, and I haven't read a novel for 20 years. It's all business, money, this, that, but I started to change the last couple of years and realize like that's just one form of wealth. There's other forms of wealth, and it's like happiness. It's also just for me, being more resilient in general. Like, I had real good skills at sales, marketing, business, money, but like I didn't have a lot of skills about how to fix things, if we're cut off from the world, if there's COVID, shutdowns, like being able to like feed myself, so I'm just trying to be a little bit more like wealth isn't just money, freedom isn't just financial freedom, it's actually just being independent, not relying on the shops, being open all the time, so that's just come with time for me. But I'm lucky because I had success in my business, so like it helped ease the financial pressure, because that's sort of if you don't have the money, it's hard to do a lot of things. So but once you get a bit of money, then you can relax and start to. But I think some people mistake, they just keep going money, right? They keep money, business, and I sort of went, yeah, no, I'm cool. Like I need enough, I need to be happy, but I don't need to be Elon Musk, man.
There you go. What is a quote that is yours or somebody else's that you resonate with?
So I would say one of my business partners used to say this quote all the time, and it's actually from IBM. He got it from. He worked at IBM. He was a real smart tech guy, and he said everything you need to do needs to be repeatable, measurable, and optimizable. And that was a real philosophy we built our business on. So just don't do anything if you can't repeat it, if it's not a repeatable process, if you can't measure it, you don't know how it's going, and you want to optimize that constantly. So I think that's probably the most influential quote that I've carried through my career.
Oh, that's a good one. It's a good one, man, because people get lost in the weeds just by focusing on stuff they can't control, or they can't even measure. And it's just like you got to focus on what's important and what's worth your time in the long run.
Absolutely.
Most definitely. I love the quote myself. So, you touched on not having time to read novels, and always reading business books. What's the one book by default, no matter what, you're going to recommend to anybody trying to get into this? Like, what's your key favorite book, and then what's the book you're reading right now?
I am gonna say "Retire Young, Retire Rich" by Robert Kiyosaki, and I'm purposely not saying "Rich Dad Poor Dad" because I know most people say that, and I started there. So if you haven't read Robert Kiyosaki, you should start at "Rich Dad Poor Dad." But I say "Retire Young, Retire Rich" because like I've honestly read every single one of his books, and Robert Kiyosaki has been so influential on me. I know a lot of people, but don't just read the first two. Keep going. Retire Young, Retire Rich was about him taking the year off when he exited his first business. That's what moved me here to New Orleans. You know what I mean? So it's pretty much, I'm really saying the whole Robert Kiyosaki series. But for those of you who are listening who've read Rich Dad Poor Dad and Cash Flow Quadrant, which is probably a lot of you, but just that, read the other ones, man. They're the best.
Definitely, and he jumps into some interesting topics too.
Oh yeah,
there's a little bit of a tangent in them, but he also understands things on a completely different level than a lot of people.
yeah.
So
I consider him my mentor.
Something to learn from. Yeah,
I consider him my mentor. I've even though he hasn't mentored me personally, man, I've listened podcasts, books, like his thoughts run through me, and I've let them influence me. In terms of book I'm reading now, a different one actually. It's the Celestine Prophecy, right? So, someone sent you read it, Frank?
Yes, that
Someone
and the audio version.
Someone sent it to me, right? So I sort of connected him with someone, and it was just like really serendipitous how I met this guy who was really cool. I'm like, hey, you got to meet this other guy, and I connected him, and like he was like, man, that's like the exact person I needed to meet, and and I'm like, and I said to him, oh, like I sort of believe in that stuff, the universe, and he went, this book, and you got to read this book. And a couple of days later, it turned up at my house. He sent it to me, so I started reading it, and I'm really enjoying that. And again, I do read a little bit more spiritual and just different. It's not. I'm still not reading novels, but I'm trying to not just read business and finance.
What's funny is I listen to a lot of audiobooks on Audible, and I've currently got 3 novels on there that I've purchased, and I've listened to a total of 5 minutes of one of them.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of the spiritual books, the business books, the educational focused. Someone's talking in a group. Oh my God, this book is just listening to this. If I hadn't already had it, I'd be jumping on those books you were talking about. And so the list just continues to grow and grow and grow. So I can definitely relate. If you haven't, one of my favorites is Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker. Totally changed my mindset, my entire thought process.
So. I haven't done that one yet. I have heard it. It's definitely there's probably a good 40 books that like I know I should read that are classics that I haven't got to yet. I've read a lot, but there's just and that's in that class, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Definitely a great one. Daniel.
So where can people get a hold of you? I'm gonna do an SEO bonus on this one. Home Buyers Louisiana, can people send you deals there as well too, like other wholesalers?
My contact details are there, so they can, and look, obviously I buy in New Orleans. If you got deals in Great New Orleans, I'm definitely a cash buyer. So reach out to me. homebuylouisiana.com is probably the best place. You can get me on LinkedIn. You can get me on Facebook now too. For a long time I kept Facebook as personal, but it's just become real estatey now. So you can get me on Facebook as well.
There you go. So I'm like thinking like an SEO title to really rank you for local. So I got you. I got.
All right. I appreciate it.
I'm gonna make sure it's really, really good for you because like this is, if you provide value, so I'm gonna provide value in my own way, and that's still the SEO, and that's my name in it. So I really got a good title for you, and I'll let you know whenever you.
All right, I love it. And we should keep in contact. If you want to geek out on some SEO, I can go there.
And
I'll definitely reach out to you on that topic.
No, I think it's such a good topic, and you have an experience with it. Maybe we'll have you on again talking about SEO specifically because I think it's it's like a misunderstood topic that like no one like really grasps what it is, and it's simple things like podcasting that helps with your SEO, and just building brand awareness. And I made a post today. We had like 5,000 visitors from Google organically. Like you didn't pay for that. I didn't pay for that. It's just being branded aware, just branding yourself 100%, using SEO, using your name, using your brand, and leveraging on that, and you get free traffic.
It's an asset that lasts for like, you need to use some maybe, but it lasts a long time. It's better than just a campaign, a direct mail campaign. It's an asset you're building. I consider my website an asset, and that's what you want.
Even side note of this, I think we had like 30,000 visitors last month on all of our websites. Just to have 5,000 visitors last month is crazy. It's crazy.
Absolutely. It's free.
It's crazy. So I'm like, brand awareness is priceless, and I think we'll bring you on for SEO because it's a topic that is so easy once you understand it, but it's hard if you don't understand it.
Yeah, absolutely.
The show is sponsored by The List Guys. Do you need more leads in your local or virtual market? 1 in 10 small businesses don't invest in any kind of marketing. The List Guys have over 35 plus list types to choose from, and you can mix and match any list or criteria. We also use the skip trace list and provide up to 7 numbers and email addresses. Every list you purchase will be scrubbed against previous purchases. The List Guys are here to save you time. Contact the List Guys today at www.1listguys.com. That's www.1listguys.com.
I appreciate your time, Aussie Steve, and like I said, hopefully people find value in it. Hopefully get send some deals your way. Appreciate Frank for helping me out on this one. But I appreciate your time, man. It was a great interview.
I enjoyed